Greta Zimmer was born in 1924 in the small town of Mielec, then part of Czechoslovakia. She grew up in a traditional Jewish home alongside her two sisters. Her childhood was filled with music, warmth, and simplicity, but it was overshadowed by the rising threat spreading across Europe. As the 1930s came to an end, the world around Greta changed rapidly. In 1939, when Nazi forces invaded, her family was torn apart forever. Greta and her sisters managed to flee to the United States, but her parents remained behind. Both would die later in concentration camps. Greta never knew their final moments, and the silence of that loss followed her throughout her life. In America, Greta rebuilt her life from nothing. At only 15, she worked wherever she could, sewing, assisting, cleaning, to help support her sisters. By 1942, with World War II raging, she wanted to contribute more directly. With an interest in medical work, she trained and was hired as a dental assistant at the New York Naval Hospital. Her days were filled with wounded soldiers, fractured jaws, infections, and stories of trauma that echoed in the corridors. Greta felt the weight of the war not through weapons, but through the human damage it left behind. Although she carried her own grief, she devoted herself to helping those who had survived theirs. Everything changed on August 14, 1945, VJ Day, when the announcement of Japan's surrender reached New York. Times Square erupted like the heartbeat of an entire world finally exhaling. Greta left the hospital on her lunch break to witness the celebration. Wearing her crisp white medical uniform, she walked through streets overflowing with people, cheering, crying, holding strangers in their arms. Then, without warning, a sailor named George Mendonça grabbed her, pulled her close, and kissed her. Greta didn't know him. She didn't expect it. She didn't consent. But before she could react, the moment was captured by photographer Alfred Eisenstadt, a photograph that would become one of the most iconic images of the 20th century. But behind the image the world celebrated as a symbol of joy and freedom, the reality was far more complicated. Greta explained years later that the kiss was not romantic in any way. It was impulsive, chaotic, and uninvited. She said, "I had no choice. He just grabbed me." At the time, she didn't realize the photograph existed. Newspapers published the image everywhere, in magazines, on posters, in museums, but the identities of the sailor and the woman remained unknown. For decades, people romanticized the photo as a passionate reunion. But to Greta, it was simply a confusing moment during a celebration she just happened to be walking through. It wasn't until the 1970s that Greta recognized herself in the image. Historians, reporters, and forensic experts compared testimonies, measurements, and old photographs until they confirmed her identity. Greta was calm and honest when describing the moment. The sailor was drunk, excited, overwhelmed by the end of a war that had consumed his youth. She emphasized that she understood the context and never felt hatred, but she also wanted the truth known. It was not a love story. It was an explosion of relief from a stranger who didn't ask permission. A reminder that history's most iconic images are often far messier than the legends built around them. After the war, Greta built a quiet life far from fame. She studied art, married fellow survivor Greta Friedman, and raised 2 children. She worked as a seamstress, librarian, and educator, never seeking attention for her connection to the famous photograph. When journalists or filmmakers found her, she spoke with gentleness, often shifting the focus from the kiss to the horrors of war, the families destroyed, the millions displaced, the lives erased. She never stopped honoring her own parents, whose stories ended in the shadows of Europe. For Greta, the true legacy of her life was not a single photograph, but the resilience she carried after losing everything. Greta Zimmer Friedman passed away in 2016, at the age of 92, in her final years. She often reflected on how strange it was to be remembered for a moment she didn't choose. The world saw romance, victory, and nostalgia. Greta saw history, complicated, imperfect, real. What she experienced on VJ Day was not the defining moment of her life, but the world decided otherwise. Even so, she accepted her unusual place in history with grace. Her life story is more than an image. It is a testament to survival, migration, loss, healing, and new beginnings. A story shaped by war and rebuilt through courage. If this story moved you, honor Greta's memory by remembering the truth behind the photograph, that even the most iconic images hide a deeper human story. Continue uncovering the past that history tried to simplify. And remember, subscribe to History Beyond Fact, where truth lives beyond the headlines, beyond the myths, and beyond the silence.